Don't we all love to learn? Well, I certainly do, especially things related to logic and math. And as you may have already expected, since I'm standing here today, I also love to play. Be it social games, board games, video games, action games, puzzle games, there are a lot of fun games that really hook me. So a natural conclusion would be that I also love games where you learn things, so-called educational games. Because educational games are great, right? When I was a kid, my mother knew all that. So in an attempt to combine learning and playing, she gave me two such educational video games for my Nintendo DS. Dr. Kawashima's Brain Training and Big Brain Academy. In both of them, you had to do stuff like remembering shapes, calculating with colors, finding symbols that don't belong in a group, etc. And they were okay. I mean, I think they were good designed and they could really help improve my cognitive abilities. But to be honest, I didn't play them because I felt like they were fun, enjoyable, great games. I played them because I felt like it would be more productive to play these games instead of Pokemon or something. But they simply never felt like real video games to me. Fast forward, nowadays I still play Pokemon, but no longer these educational games I played as a kid. And I asked myself, why is that? On one hand, maybe they would be too easy for me now. At least I hope I've become quite a bit smarter. But on the other hand, it's because when I want to play a video game, I don't feel like grabbing a calculator or playing memory or something. No, I want to dive into a world different from ours and explore its rules, boundaries, possibilities. Hence, for the rest of my talk, I'd like to differentiate between the following two self-made categories for educational video games. One, games that educate, meaning full-fledged video games that were designed with an educational topic in mind from the very first steps. And second, gamified education, like these ensembles of minigames I played as a kid. A few years ago, when I was still in my bachelor studies, I visited a lecture called Emerging Computer Technologies. There I learned about technologies that are different from our classical 0-1-based computers. This included reversible computing, microfluidics, and probably the only technology you already heard of, quantum computing. Fascinated by quantum computing, I decided to do my bachelor thesis and project about it. I made a website to visualize quantum algorithms to make them more accessible to other computer science students. My supervising professor was already an advocate of bringing more computer scientists into this physicists-dominated field. He was the one who taught emerging computer technologies and got me on board. Because interdisciplinarity sparks new ideas, and a lot of problems quantum computers are facing are similar to ones classical computers faced in the early days as well. And I also felt like quantum computing could be quite intimidating, because one might think it's too complicated, or you have to know a lot about physics to be able to contribute. But that's not true. As long as you believe in the underlying math, you can just use it to work on quantum computing. After I was done with my bachelor and started my master, I thought to myself, why stop with the website? Wouldn't it be cool if there was an educational quantum computing video game? So I opened my browser and searched for such games. And indeed, I found a couple, like Quantum Minesweeper or Quantum Tic-Tac-Toe. You can imagine the latter as playing tic-tac-toe on multiple boards simultaneously. Multiple boards that are in superposition, meaning while they're all used for playing, only one of them can win at the end. And some fields on this superposition board are entangled, meaning the result of one implies the result of the other, but I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me give you a short introduction on quantum computing first. And since this is a talk about educational games, let me do so playing a game. A short educational minigame I want to play with everyone in here to teach you 3 very important concepts at the heart of quantum computing. The game consists of 2 rounds, and all you have to do is raise and lower your hands while you have your eyes closed, and please, no talking. Don't worry, it's not about winning or losing. It's really just about showcasing these 3 concepts. I will first explain the rules and then tell you when the actual game starts, and it's your turn to play along. For the first round, we start with 1 hand raised and 1 hand lowered. Then I will count to 3, and when I reach 3, you will either raise your lowered hand or you lower your raised hand, such that both your hands are now either lowered or raised. Again, you cannot win or lose by doing one thing over the other, so just do whatever your gut tells you to do in the moment. I'll repeat the rules again. We start with 1 hand raised, 1 hand lowered, and when I count to 3, you either raise your lowered hand such that both your hands are raised, or you lower your hand such that both your hands are lowered. All right, is everyone ready? So please play with me. Prepare by raising 1 hand, lowering the other, and closing your eyes. Great. I will now count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Now, if you haven't done so, now's the time to raise your lowered hand or lower your raised hand. Perfect. Please leave your hands where they are, but you can open your eyes again. If you have a look around, like the light is so bright I can't see, but I think roughly 50% of you lowered their hands and roughly 50% of you raised both of their hands. As expected, since you mostly acted randomly and independently. You can get comfortable again. What you just witnessed was superposition and measurement. In the beginning, when you had 1 hand raised and 1 hand lowered, you were in 2 classical binary states at the same time. 0 with your lowered hand and 1 with your raised hand. Combined, you were in a quantum state called superposition, which is both 0 and 1 simultaneously. Then, when I counted to 3, I measured your quantum state, and therefore it had to collapse to one of 2 classical states. 0, both hands lowered, or 1, both hands raised. Good. Let's move on to the second round. Just like before, we start again with 1 hand raised, 1 hand lowered, but now there's an additional constraint, or let's call it a quantum goal. You will be divided into groups in a row-wise fashion, so this section, first row will be a group, second row will be a group, third row will be another group, and so on and so forth. Same for this section, first row will be a group, second row another group, and so on and so forth, and also for these 2 sections. And in your group, the quantum goal is that when I count to 3 again and measure your superposition, that you all collapse to the same state in your group. But keep in mind, you have to have your eyes closed and you're not allowed to talk. So just like before, we start with 1 hand raised, 1 hand lowered. You can already prepare your superposition. And when I count to 3, you either raise or lower your hand again, but now with the quantum goal in mind that you should try to collapse to the same state as everyone else in your group. All right, so I see you're all ready. I will now count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, leave your hands where they are, please, but you can open your eyes again. Is there actually a group that achieved the goal? Okay. Yeah, with less people it's easier. Great, perfect. Statistically, for a full row, almost a full row, that's like winning 10 coin flips in a row. Awesome, you can get comfortable again. Congratulations, you were either lucky or you're quantum humans. But jokes aside, why is it so hard to achieve this quantum goal? Why is there only one group or two, if we count the ones with less than 10 people? Because you all acted independently. You would have to communicate with the rest of your group and decide on a strategy. Will you all lower both of your hands? Will you all raise both of your hands? Or will you decide based on room temperature or something? But the point is, you have to communicate. And that's what makes you classical. Except for these quantum humans. In quantum computing, states can be shared without communication. This is called entanglement. Meaning, if, for example, 1 of 10 quantum states is measured and therefore collapses to either 0 or 1, all the other states that are entangled with this one quantum state immediately and without the need for any communication collapse to the same state as well, no matter how far apart. That was a lot, but congratulations, you're all now quantum computing experts. So let's move on and get back to educational video games. So I found educational quantum computing video games. Or as I defined in the beginning, I found gamified education for quantum computing. But I wanted something that feels like a real video game, a quantum computing game that educates. So I did what computer scientists often do when they cannot find what they're searching for. I sat in front of my laptop and programmed it myself. I named my game QRogue, inspired by the 1980s released classical game Rogue. And when I showed the first version of QRogue to my colleagues and watched them play, I realized, damn, I didn't make a game that educates, but gamified education. Well, back to the drawing board. Quite literally, since it also didn't look good at all. This should be a quantum puzzle where you have to replicate a certain quantum state. The game needed more. Not just these quantum puzzles, which are like mini-games that don't really have a connection to each other. I needed a game world. An immersive world where the player can experience quantum computing also outside the puzzles. Especially since quantum computing can feel a bit weird, as its main concepts aren't really observable in our big-scale human realm. I needed a game world that hooks the players and incorporates quantum computing concepts naturally, such that the player doesn't even get the chance to feel like something's weird. So I added a game world. A game world where the player can move around with their cute little robot called Qbot. I added enemies called decos. I introduced superposition to the decos and a measurement ability to the Qbot. Now, whenever the Qbot moves towards the decos, their state is measured, and by pure chance, they will either block the Qbot's path until the player can solve a quantum puzzle, or they will vanish without a trace. They collapse to 0 or 1. And some of these decos are entangled. They form a group, meaning if one of them is measured, all the other entangled decos collapse to the same state as well. Here you can see they all vanish. After a couple of iterations, some fine-tuning and implementing tutorials, I conducted 2 user studies to find out if QRogue actually achieves its goal. If it is fun, if I created an immersive world, if my game can teach you a thing or two about quantum computing. If I created gamified education or a game that educates. According to studies, players were immersed. 44% agreed and 50% even strongly agreed that they were fully focused on the game while playing. And every single participant was curious on how the game evolved, because there wasn't enough time to explore everything. Immersive world, check. What about the educational aspect? Every participant at least slightly agreed that the game increased their knowledge about quantum computing. Over 70% felt like they understood the basic ideas of the knowledge taught, and the game tried to they were motivated to apply the taught knowledge. And more than 85% were eager to learn more about quantum computing after playing QRogue. Educational aspect, check. Lastly, I want to share what delights me the most about the study results. A lot of participants told me they learned the most or had the most fun when they could simply experiment. And that's also my favorite part of QRogue. I wanted to create a game where you don't learn by reading texts, deriving formulas, or rebuilding algorithms, but by diving into a world different from ours, exploring the rules, boundaries, possibilities of quantum computing. Thank you.